Hi, my name is Brandon, and I'm an alcoholic and addict in recovery, and today I'm going to talk about why I refer to myself that way. There's a lot of discussion in the recovery community and in the scientific community about the proper way to refer to substance use disorders, as they're known now in the scientific community. And you used to call substance use disorders alcoholism and addiction, but a lot of discussion has taken place over the last few decades about whether or not the words alcoholism and addiction carry a stigma that's actually damaging to the people that are trying to recover from those situations. And so it's a very big topic for people to tackle when they start, especially those of us in recovery, when we start trying to figure out, well, how am I going to refer to myself? And that's important because one of the things that we learn in recovery is that words carry power. We want to be intentional in the words that we choose and make sure that we understand why we're using them, so that we don't hurt ourselves, so that we don't hurt other people, and so that we really speak what we mean. Now, today I'm going to read a little bit from Recovery 2.0 by Tommy Rosen and hear his thoughts about this. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about why I refer to myself as an alcoholic and an addict in recovery, and then also why I honestly don't care what anybody else refers to them as, and encourage them to find their own words that speak the most truth to what they identify with their condition. So reading what Tommy Rosen has to say about it, he says, I began to pay close attention to my words, becoming more and more aware of their power to actually create. I could hurt someone with my words. I could help someone with my words. The intention behind my words, the tone that I used, and timing would be important considerations. The simple act of chanting these mantras in my meditations or in sessions with Guru Prem, along with my yoga practice, changed the way I saw myself in the world. As someone who had spent 12 years calling himself an addict, I could no longer identify in this way. I saw that stating I'm an addict regularly was like saying to the subconscious mind that I believed I would remain so. It was a declaration of identity that would obviously be incorrect from my new perspective. I now prefer to say I'm a person in long-term recovery, or I experience addiction, or I am in recovery from addiction. So Tommy presents here several different options that I've heard in meetings. I've heard lots of people refer to themselves in these ways. I am in recovery from addiction. I'm a person in long-term recovery. And these, in my opinion, are all perfectly adequate and fine descriptions of the position that these people find themselves in. I feel like it is important for everyone to identify what words best describe their own situation, what words speak the truth of their situation, and then use those words. And it's something to me that's very personal. I don't feel like we need to prescribe a particular way for people to refer to themselves. I continue to refer to myself as an alcoholic and an addict for a few reasons. One of them goes back to something that Tommy says here. He says, I could no longer identify in this way. I saw that stating I'm an addict regularly was like saying to the subconscious mind that I believe I would remain so. And to me, I do believe that I will remain an addict and alcoholic for the rest of my life. I am not an active alcoholic or addict. I'm not actively using drugs or alcohol to alter my consciousness anymore. But I do believe that I will remain those things. Saying that I'm an alcoholic and an addict reminds me that I am never far from that activity. I'm that activity is just one bad decision away. And in a way, saying those words gives me a sense of humility. It humbles me a little bit and helps to keep me connected with my program of recovery. It helps to remind me that, yes, I am in recovery, but at the core, I am still an alcoholic and addict who is just one bad decision away from going back to using. So I feel like that's really important. Now, I do like the term substance use disorder as opposed to alcoholism or addiction, although I tend to use them interchangeably. I haven't just completely switched to using substance use disorder. But I do like substance use disorder because I do feel like that there are a lot of people who would likely identify more with substance use disorder rather than with the societal stigma that comes with alcoholism, addiction, that kind of thing. So I'm completely open to all sorts of different terminology to describe the phenomena that we're trying to describe here. The important thing, I think, though, is that everybody finds something that speaks to their version of the truth, as long as their version of the truth is accurate and truthful. And so when you talk about being in recovery, when you talk about the way that you refer to yourself, I think it's really important to recognize that this is a personal decision and not to look down on someone because they've chosen words to describe themselves that are different than the words you've chosen to describe you. And in fact, making sure that you are staying in your lane in this particular area is a good practice of the program of recovery. You really should not be dictating what the way other people live their lives. That's not something that's in your control. And so respecting and appreciating the way that they do things is an important part. And I would also say that it is totally acceptable to be curious about, well, why do you refer to yourself that way instead of this way? You might learn something by doing that. A lot of people do not appreciate the stigma that comes with the words alcoholism and addiction. And that's completely understandable because we live in a world where stigma exists around those words and conditions. And most of the people that I talk to, for example, when they were in their addiction, they didn't think of themselves as addicts because in their mind they had the same stigma. They felt like an addict or an alcoholic was someone who was homeless, under a bridge, who was, living in very derelict circumstances. And they were not that. They were holding down a job and they were a member of a community and they didn't have all those problems. And so even addicts and alcoholics, before we come to recovery, have stigma against alcoholism and addiction. So we've got to recognize these things when we think about the way not only we're going to refer to ourselves, but also respecting the way that other people refer to themselves. It's something that I've gone back and forth on, but for me, just saying that I'm an alcoholic and addict in recovery is what I identify with the most. And for now, I don't see any need to change that. That may change in the future. I'm only 2 years into recovery. I'm still relatively new to all of this. So once I learn more, when the situation Tommy describes in Recovery 2.0 here, he was 12, 13 years into recovery when he got to this point. So I may change the way I refer to myself at some point, but the important thing is that I identify what feels the most truthful and accurate to me. I stick with that, and I don't worry about the way that other people refer to themselves. And that's what I feel is really important in this scenario. That's it for today. I'll be back tomorrow with more.